Yeah, that's right. We are doing book club with the countdown because this is a big night. This is the 2024 look back, the new comic book day book club year in review. That means me. That means White Whale Comics, and you guys better be prepared for some shenanigans and discussions about where we are. Where is comic books in 2024? How are we doing?
So some may say the biggest night of the year.
I mean, I think
People
so.
people have been waiting 8 hours in the chat for this.
What there it is. We have the white whale and the white tiger
Yeah,
both
who would win?
attendance.
I suppose
and
it depends on if it's on land or in the sea.
yeah, somebody's gonna have an advantage. Las Cruces was here, 7 hours early. He was here early. So
yeah, it almost seems like at this point we should just do this on your channel because you have people actually excited to watch, whereas I have people
I disagree.
actively coming into the chat to say, "Oh, you're still a channel."
Gordon's gonna be hurt by that statement. I'm just saying.
I'm just kidding. I appreciate everyone who watches on my channel.
We got Brian LCS in the chat. He says Ultimate Spidey for the win. There it is. It's right there. It's right there. And we got Lost in Comics. I know he is a Bat fan, and he dropped his 25 best books of the year earlier today. And I left, I think I left 16 comments on his video, one for each time I felt like I loved or disliked a book that was on his list. I may have spammed his video. It's possible. What is Comic Cap Collectibles doing in the chat? How you doing, sir? Good to see you. I promise you, we're gonna get into it. This list is absolute free for me. That I can tell you. Hello from Nude Mexico. White Well, I like you. Lots. Maybe you don't want your life.
You don't.
And Las Cruces is back. Welcome, folks, in the chat. Yeah, this is our 2024 year in review. Hello, baby. Good to see you, sir.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I wouldn't say beat your ass. It was a pretty back and forth match.
That's what you want to see. You want to give the audience what they came for.
It was a great time. Go back and watch our episode and watch future episodes on Tony's channel. It's a lot of fun.
Slab Dragon. Hey, TJ.
Oh, TJ.
Good to see you, sir. So the way this works is we're gonna give a little overview of the year of 2024, our thoughts and feelings about how the year's been going. We both have a top 5 list. I have a lot of honorable mentions, but I'm going to try to cull that down to just a couple to highlight for the year, and then we'll hear from you in the chat on some of the things that you liked from this year. So obviously, drop your faves. Let us know if you have some favorite books from 2024. But I'm going to just start off with a pretty blanket, simple question for you, Alec. What are your feelings about where comics sit in 2024? How are you feeling about comics?
So I kind of, as always, look at this question from two sides of the coin, like the creative side and then the market / collectible side.
Sure.
Because obviously that's very much what comics are. Like, you can't kind of have one without the other. And I feel like I say this every year, and every year it continues to be true, that the majority of the time, the big two has continued to let me down. I think that they are having, I know, like, I sound like a broken record saying this, but they have major editorial issues on both sides that either are forcing or are letting through subpar storylines and focusing on money-making gimmicks instead of telling great stories, which to me is really what attracts buyers. Like, sure, you're gonna maybe sell extra books for doing event, but you look at what the biggest sellers of the year are as far as like numbers go, and it's things like Ultimate Spider-Man and Absolute Batman, which regardless of whether or not they're on our lists, people are very excited about because of the stories.
Right.
Tacoma Comics says they don't want to push the envelope with exceptions. But I feel like they on some sense, like Marvel with the Red Band stuff, think they're pushing the envelope, but that's kind of just another gimmick. But is it making the money? I don't know.
It's fair. And I know that a lot of people feel like DC have this feeling that DC is at least less gimmicky and has more talent on what they're producing these days.
Sure,
but that's obviously
what about All In and Absolute? Like, and I don't want to say, I feel like Marvel is trying to produce good stories. I don't think they're trying to make crappy books. I just think that they're just not successful.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with some of that, and I certainly feel like as far as the top tier writer and artist talents, I do think DC is doing better at hiring those individuals and putting them on big books better than I feel like Marvel is doing. Marvel is trying to get away with untested talent, and that can be a very hit or miss proposition. But as far as DC, I've been impressed with, even if I'm not loving the books, it seems like they are trying, like the New York Yankees, to rope in the biggest talent and throw them onto those titles, if nothing else.
Yeah.
What is up? Cliff is in the chat. I said hello to Rod real quickly. So appreciate you guys coming by. Here's something that I feel I want to preface my list with, because I feel like in general there was a lot to love, and there are a lot of great books out there. And as always with you and I, it tends to be our favorite books. A lot of them will be non-big two publishers. For whatever reason, and it could be that part of me that when something is adored with a lot of adulation going around it, it irks me in some way. I tend to feel like I'm probably not going to like it because it's popular or something. There's something about that.
Hipster.
It maybe because it invariably the words that I've heard most often in this community, as far as the stuff people are loving, and it's very opinion based. This is just me. The Geiger universe, the Absolute, the Ultimate, the Energon, all of these things, as just in general, are so far from my list. They're so far from my top favorite books. It doesn't mean I hate all of them, because there's a lot of books covered in those categories. But for the most part, these are things that I've been underwhelmed by in them, and yet the community loves. So
comparatively to
what I have picked as my favorites, right? And in that way, I'm not trying to yuck anybody's yum, but I'm just it makes me question, like, what is it that I'm missing if these are the big books that everybody's loving and enjoying. And I'm looking at the books that I'm loving and enjoying. I'm like, nobody's really talking about these. So there's an interesting balance for me where I feel like I'm so happy to see comics selling and people buying them and people talking about them and people enjoying them. But I also feel like I'm not on the bus because I'm like, I'm not enjoying that.
Well, I mean, I think there's a couple things.
Plus and the minus of that, I guess.
Sure, there's a couple things at play. As far as I think, like one is just taste, right? Like
absolutely.
Like some people like apple, some people like oranges. That's
absolutely
tales all this time.
Those rare flavors.
Yeah. Two is exposure. Like more people know about Spider-Man and Batman than they do about some random indie book.
Right.
So, and like, I think we're all guilty of this, because I was looking at a lot of best of lists on like websites this week, just seeing like what other people thought were their favorite books of the year. And overwhelmingly, and I find this a lot over the years, is that there's like even indie stuff than what we tend to gravitate towards dominates a lot of those lists.
Right.
And I used to read a lot of that back in college and stuff, which I had a grim realization today that this year marks the year that I have been alive longer post college graduation than before college graduation, and I felt my skeleton grow cold.
Yeah.
And like honestly, like I would love to get back into reading that kind of stuff because it really is some of the best comics I've ever had the pleasure to read.
Are you talking about the stuff that's maybe a little more self-published or real small publisher
Like
stuff?
real small publisher stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
No, it's a fair point.
So again, it's partially taste, it's partially exposure, but because it's like look at the biggest movies of every year. It's like Fast and the Furious and stuff like that. And listen, it is well documented that I love Fast and the Furious.
It is.
Would I ever include them on my favorite movies of all time or favorite movies of the year? Probably not, just because I tend to gravitate towards, like the most recent movie I saw was Nosferatu, which I thought was amazing and probably is not everybody's taste, but is I'm sure not going to do the business that a Fast and the Furious is going to do, and not going to get the amount of people talking about it and something like that. But
which, to your point, I think there is that name recognition, IP concept for things like Spider-Man, Batman, Fast and the Furious that you don't have for a Rare Flavors, a Beneath the Trees, or what have you, right? Because they want to make money. They're in the market to make money, and some of the stuff that Gore is saying, as far as the absolute and the ultimate at Marvel, indies can dominate as far as image, maybe, but I think the big two seem to be a bigger part of that. And Drew is talking about the connected universes being a valuable resource in in marketing and selling and those kinds of things. And yes, Gal Gadot is in the Fast and the Furious. Yeah, she is.
She in something else that
I don't think so. She's kind of a up and comer.
Yeah, maybe some like inconsequential superhero universe.
Yeah,
just
put Vin Diesel
in Magic Lasso.
Legion. Yeah, put Vin Diesel in Beneath the Trees, and then you got a big thing.
I mean, he's in Guardians of the Galaxy.
He is. Yep.
And Iron Giant.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite animated movies ever.
Yeah, mostly thanks to Vin Diesel's vocal work.
He is Superman. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that, how the year feels, because as much as I'm happy seeing comics being talked about and books like, the Energon books or the Geiger books being popular with fans, I'm always feeling like I'm a little off the wagon for those things, because as much as I read them and I've tried to keep up with all of those things, Absolute, Ultimate, Energon, Unnamed, or whatever the Geiger universe is called these days, I try to keep up with them, but most of them feel like I'm doing work. Like they don't feel enjoyable, like fun. I mean, I'm really loving this.
That shouldn't be. That's like the opposite of what you want comics to be like.
Well, absolutely.
Regardless of like how depressing the books that I tend to like are, like
I mean, obviously
fun reading them.
Deviant's not going to be the most uplifting read, as Circumstances always tells us, but I get more joy from it in the sense of like enjoyment of the reading experience than I was getting from those other connected universes. And for my list, even when I went through my top 20, none of those connected universes landed in my top 20. None of them. Have I searched within? I mean, I'm not again. Yeah, I absolutely. I was having a conversation with Cliff about how he loved Redcoat and how he felt like after a few issues, it really became something deep and meaningful. And
I did, but I couldn't get past that first issue.
I tried 3 issues of it and I loathed it so much that I was questioning, like, why am I still reading this? Like, I'm absolutely disliking it. So like, for me, it's an active dislike that it doesn't have anything to do with, other people enjoying it. I'm glad that those books are selling and people are talking about comics and enjoying their comics.
Well, it also,
for whatever reason though, I'm psychologically, I'm clearly harmed in some way, and I'm going another direction with my picks.
it also feels like really bad when you spend $5 on a book and don't enjoy it.
Great point. Yeah. Those people,
So,
whenever someone says to me, oh, you got to give it like 4 or 5 issues and I'm like, that's $30. I
yeah,
got to spend
like
$30 before I start liking it.
I'll check it out from the library as a trade at that point. Like, I'm not gonna if it turns out to be something everyone is talking about. But yeah, I mean, comics are too expensive and like everything is so expensive these days that you have to kind of pick and choose which titles you want to read month to month. And
yeah,
if I read Redcoat #1 and give it a 2 out of 10 or whatever I gave it on the review show, like I'm not gonna read the next couple issues, no matter how much people are talking about them.
Yeah. I mean, I'm clearly the idiot who was like, I want to be in the conversation when these books are being talked about. It's the same reason I've kept up with Absolute and Ultimate is like, I just want to at least get far enough in where I feel like I can speak to it. And then if I'm moving on, I'm moving on.
You know, to circle back on the first beginning of this conversation, like it's because you're an active YouTuber and you want to stay in touch with what people are talking about.
Truly, that's part of it. Yeah.
And Drew says, and I do agree with you too, that like people being excited about comics is good for the industry. Like, I don't care what you like. If you like it, that's great. The only caveat I'll give to that is that when things like that I don't necessarily find to be my favorite types of books sell so incredibly well that's what is the bar for what people want, that
if it reshapes the market in some manner, that like this is now the mold.
Right.
Yeah, I can see that. I saw Christina's in the chat. Hi, Christina. Thank you for dropping Alec's link there for people.
But to go back real quick, my other side of the coin very quickly, because it's going to be a shorter conversation, I think. On the collectible side, specifically, I mean, the market is the market. Like, it's doesn't make any sense. It's like things go up, things go down. It seemingly for at the whim of the wind.
Right.
The one thing I do want to talk about briefly is incentive variance and how not only are the majority pretty much worthless a week or two after they come out, like there's always those ones that are just going to hit, and like that Spawn 1 in 50 that just came out, that's like $300 now.
Yikes.
Which is just wild to me. But like the majority of like 1 in 25s, which used to like hold some value, I feel like, are like literally dollar bin books within a couple weeks. And as you know, my narrow scope of the industry that I am able to connect with through my work, shops are just like not ordering up for incentives anymore. So if they're ordering 20 copies, like it's not worth it to them to order 5 more copies to get a book that they can maybe get $7 out of.
Got it.
And that's
which is impacting the market in general, or at least the market for a shop.
Where, you know, the idea of ratio pricing just doesn't exist anymore. Like a 1 in 25 is rarely $25 on day of release. It's not even $12 anymore, which it used to be for a long time. Now, like Midtown is selling them for like $8, $9.
Oh, geez.
That's good. I love that. That should be on a t-shirt.
Math.
So yeah, it's just it is. I don't know what that means as far as the scope of the collectible market and the future of print comics, but it is something that I felt like I should put a pin in so that I'm on record saying it.
For sure. No, fair. Gore's talking about people coming in to get Jeff the Land Shark's first appearance. He's hot right now. He's hot. And then yes, the new Hush series. There's a new Hush series.
Because of a video game.
Oh, the Land Shark, yeah. For the The
because
Marvel
of
game.
Marvel Rivals.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention before we get into our list is an ongoing debate that you and I have, and we're on both sides of this topic. And I know we're drawing out getting to our top fives here. Is it acceptable to include a title on your list that is a miniseries that's unfinished? And what I mean by that is, books that have maybe 2 or 3 issues published in one calendar year and 2 or 3 in the next calendar year. How do you, feel about putting them on one side, one list or the other, or both? And because we've debated this a bunch, and there's been a lot. I tend to be a stickler on it, and maybe it's the teacher in me that wants to be like, nope, it's not done yet. It can be, released next year. It can be on next year's list. I tend to be hard on books that have not finished, especially if they are due to finish. They're not ongoing, I tend to want to wait until they're finished to include them on a best of list. I know you've got a slightly different opinion on that, and I'd love to hear it.
And we talked about this briefly before going live, so I don't want to, I guess not repeat myself too much because no one in the chat has heard this, but I'm going to say one thing off the bat that is going to make you scramble to reevaluate your list.
There we go.
I understand your point of like, if 2 or 3 issues have come out this year, maybe it's too small of a scope to say it's one of the best books of the year.
I mean, because an example of that was last year with Beneath the Trees, because they had 2 issues that came out. It was November, December, and then the book finished mostly in 2024. And there were people that counted it as their 2023 best of the year because they had a couple issues that came out.
Conversely, and this isn't my point yet, so keep your seatbelt on. Conversely, if a book has 6 issues come out the year before and 2 the next year, is that worth putting on the best of the best of list for the year? Because only 2 issues came out this year. But something like Deviant, which I'm guessing based on your logic is not on your list this year, but has come out every month this year,
but still has one more freaking issue left.
But how does that not count towards your best of the year if it's been great all year long? Like, it's literally of the year. And the thing I said to you before we started, before we went live, was how does that factor into ongoings, especially when there's, artists and writer changes and stuff like that, where, if somebody's run on a book ends in February, what year do you count that in? And I see you changing your list.
No, it reminded me of I've got my long 25 list here, and it reminded me of Nightwing, because Nightwing obviously is a book that had Tom Taylor finish his run in August, September, and then a new team start up. Were it to be included, are you including both teams? How do you divide that up? Right, that's a great question.
I mean, and I suppose you can say, the Tom Taylor, Bruno Redondo run of Nightwing until it ended, and then I stopped reading it, or it stopped being good. Like, it's still, if you think about it in trade form, like, it's still one of your best books of the year, maybe. But I think it's just, it overcomplicates things for me when you think about things that way. And I understand your thought process. I just think it's wrong.
And for me, like, as much as I feel confident that a book like Deviant will end strong, I just don't know. It's entirely possible for someone to fumble the ball in the last minute and
so
turn something into trash.
Say, hey, I messed up. I want to redact my choice. I want to take the crown away from Miss America and give it to the runner-up because
they fell on the 1 yard line. Yeah. We have some other friends in the chat. What's going on, Matt? What's going on, Dracula? Good to see you guys. We got JP in the chat. Yes, I am a stickler. Very, very much so. Apologies in advance. Yeah, for me, it's like I just want a hard and fast rule. And if the hard and fast rule is it's not done, it's not done. And then it can be included next year. There's no discluding anybody or doubling up a mini series where it gets to win twice or whatever, which seems unfair as well.
The only thing that complicates that is that we have different rules.
Yeah.
And so take that for what it is. Like John's list is nonsense and
accurate.
Is inaccurate based on logic, and mine is actually my favorite books of the year.
It's fair. Dracula. Adrian says, speaking of unfinished, it looks like some unfinished Aftershocks titles are returning. I assume they're just publishing the last of whatever was in the works. I mean, it's possible.
Or is a different publisher finishing them?
Somebody bought the rights and just keeps publishing them. I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah. So for me, there were two books that are like tricky for me, both of which have one issue left to be published, both of which I've very much enjoyed, both of which remain, for me at least, unfinished, as though I had not seen the final act in some manner.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was at a loss coming up with my list because of these two, and they tend to just be I made them my honorable mention as a result. I just sort of left them there saying, you know what, I'd rather mention them when they're done next year. And that's kind of how I justified including my top 5 all having either finished, or if they're ongoing, they're still publishing issues. That's just kind of my stupid logic.
All right. Well, would you like to begin?
Yeah.
Or do you have more to say on this topic?
Nothing more to say on this topic. In fact, it's been 27 minutes and we haven't really started a list, so I kind of feel like I've gypped people in some way or another. So my two honorable mentions are probably on Alec's list. They're both one issue away from being done, and we've mentioned one of them a ton. It's Deviant. Absolutely phenomenal series. I've enjoyed every issue. It creeps the crap out of me, and yet also keeps me interested, and I like the characters a ton, and I find their plights very interesting, and I like the artwork by Hickson, and of course the story by Tinian is absolutely phenomenal. And my other one is Grommets. Rick Remender always does well by me. Brian Posehn has been doing a great job on the artwork, and they're both just one issue.
I think Brian Posehn's the co-writer, isn't he?
Oh, is he the co-writer? And then is it Parson as the artist?
I think so.
Okay. So for me, those are my honorable mentions. Dagger, new member. What's up, Dagger? Thank you for joining the YouTube channel. I appreciate. Let me see if I got something funny for you here. Let me see what I can play. Let's see. How about my kids hitting each other?
No, well, now they know. Let it go, let it go. Can't put that game on. The cold never bothered me anyway.
Always happy for that.
How do they feel about that? Or do they even know that you?
They've seen it. They've seen it. They choose to ignore it at this point.
Yeah, that's probably best for their mental health.
So, but those are my two honorable mentions, both books that I'm assuming will be high on my list next year, with one issue left for each. It's hard not to count them as 2024 books because they're just basically one away. It almost pisses me off because, for whatever reason, Deviant took a 3-month break to write its last issue. Like, just freaking drop it, man. They could have easily published it all in 2024, and then they took a break for the last issue.
Yeah,
like just to screw with
this.
They
want to make sure that it's quality and not rushed.
Oh, it's baloney. And that almost made me guarantee it not a spot, just because they were like so nice and timely, and all of a sudden they were like, "We're gonna take a few months off and make this happen in 2 years." Unacceptable. Yeah, we vamp. I vamp. Oh, hey, what's up? Wait, no good comics in the chat. What's going on, Al? Federico.
Man, you're really.
No, I'm just waiting. I'm waiting for you to drop the hammer on my decision there.
I'll wait.
Well, what's your honorable mentions? Did you want to mention something?
So I told you before we went live that I kind of grouped my honorable mentions into my 5th spot for a reason.
Yeah.
So if you want to jump, if those are the only,
those are the two that I'm gonna really just make my honorable mentions officially. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I'll start at number 5, and I put 3 titles on my number 5,
which is fair because I'll count those other 2 as my 5th and 6th one.
And the reason I did this is because you know, at the start of the show, I really shit on the big 2, but I felt like I should give some credit where credit's due for the big 2 for titles that I did enjoy this year.
Okay.
One of which is an absolute title. I bet you can guess.
I'm assuming Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman, yeah. That's another reason why I didn't just put it at number 5, because there's only been a couple issues out so far, so it's hard to say that, like, especially because issue 2 was a drop off from issue 1 for me, but still, like,
strong enough
and really, like, an enjoyable superhero book for me, which again these days is becoming more rare.
For sure.
Ultimate Spider-Man, which, you know, is not like the best book I've ever read, but still, like, enjoyable, well done Spider-Man story that is taking things in a new direction. That, you know, I was a big fan of the original Ultimate Spider-Man run by Bendis and Bagley, but it was literally a retelling of the same story.
A modernizing.
Where this is, you know, clearly we've discussed it before on the show. It's its own thing, and I appreciate the thought of, like, taking a character that's so well established and saying, okay, what can we do with it that's hasn't been done before, kind of.
Chris is with you completely.
And the third, which
I mean, and obviously, I think it can't go unnoted that the 2 artists, at least on those 2 books, have done phenomenal work.
Yeah,
I like the artwork a ton. Obviously, Marco Cicchetto
is crazy.
Probably the best artist working at Marvel right now. He's a phenomenal artist.
Also, I think besides some questionable stuff in issue 2, issue 1 was, like, crazy good for me.
Yeah, gorgeous.
And
then the third one
is just because I, besides the fact that it ended just so dumb, it was just a really just wild ride, which was Blood Hunt.
Oh, the Blade event.
Like, I don't read many events anymore, but I gave this one a shot just because it sounded cool. Vampires taking over the world, and it was fun. And I feel like, besides a few things, they didn't take it too super seriously.
I don't think I've actually read all the way to the end of it. I've read, like, bits and pieces, but I never finished it.
I mean, it's worth reading. It ends with a whimper instead of a bang, but, you know, what doesn't these days at Marvel? So those are my number 5.
Chaos in comics. What's going on? Blood Hunt was Fast and the Furious Marvel with vampires.
Yeah, which probably is why I liked it.
There you go. All right, so you gave us some big 2 love there. Then that's fantastic. And it looks like there's some fans of Blood Hunt in the chat and absolute Wonder Woman. Although Drew Manchu is not there. He's not having.
Listen, I the Hunt loser Drew Manchu is wrong about this one too.
It's Wonder Woman AF, right? There it is. All right. Well, number 5 on my list. I'm going. Where is it? I'm going with Jorge Corona and Scotty Young's Ain't No Grave. This is a duo that I've been very happy with. Whether it's Middle West, the Me You Love in the Dark, I think they've got a really great, like, visual language that they utilize. And I was not expecting this series. It's kind of like a Western mixed with, you know, the aesthetic of Coco and the idea of, like, traveling to the underworld to duel the devil. I think I don't think enough people talk about Ain't No Grave, and I that team is starting to be one of my favorite indie teams all around. So I'm just I had heard some people talking about it. I don't know how I had missed it when it was first coming out, and I read the whole thing, and it was absolutely fantastic. And the artwork, Jorge Corona, it might be my favorite I've seen from him. I just really love how wild and over the top he takes it. I love the Western aesthetic plus the sort of Dia de los Muertos aesthetic that he's got going. The whole thing really, really worked. Middle Western, there you go. I like that. I can go with that. But he crushed it. Really, really great. And I like to hear that he's also a nice person to meet and that as well. And looks like other people have read it, so I'm happy to hear that as well.
I read the first issue. I really enjoyed it, but it's one of those books that I decided to trade weight on. I just haven't read it yet. So it's good to hear that it was at a high quality throughout. So I'm excited to read it now.
Yeah. And I'm just going to keep watching for those guys because obviously it's kind of like when Brubaker and Sean Phillips team up. Like you want to get more of it. You want to see.
They work so well together.
Yeah.
Exactly. They speak the same language
perfectly. So yeah, the trade just came out, says Justin. So I'm glad to hear that. People can grab that. Great. And yeah, I did see his stuff on Transformers. Yeah. So that's my number 5.
Okay. My number 4 is going to drive you nuts for a reason kind of opposite from the point you brought up at the beginning about books that come out and when they come out.
Okay.
For a couple reasons, because number 1, I only started reading this book today. I read the first 3 issues, which technically came out in 2023, but it still is coming out at least to issue 12. I don't know if 12 is the last issue or if it's still going.
Okay.
But these first 3 issues impressed me so much that I was like, okay, I'm gonna bump something out and put this on my list because
nice.
I really am suddenly in love with this book, and it is called Knights.
I've never heard of this one, so I'm writing it down.
From the writer Bolero.
Okay.
I don't know that he's done anything else.
Can I blow that up? Nice.
And artwork is by Luigi Formisano, not Luigi Mangione.
Okay.
So don't worry, he's not in jail, as far as I know. The basis of the story is that it is about this young kid who he was being raised by a single mother. She passes away. He has to move to Florida to move in with his cousin and his roommates. It's interesting because this isn't really brought up in the story, but it's like a little header at the beginning of the book that Florida is owned by Spain and there's only 31 states. And it starts in the late 90s and then quickly jumps till about 2004. I think it jumps 5 years in the future.
Okay.
But vampires and other kind of supernatural creatures are everyday occurrences. So they're not really looked at as being unusual to see and aren't really necessarily bad or evil. So like you'll see ghosts around and stuff and people don't really think anything of it.
Okay.
And it's about this kid, Vincent, who moves to Florida to stay with his cousin. His cousin is a hitman, and he doesn't know this. One of their roommates
what does this book not have? Are there robots?
One of their not yet. One of their roommates is a vampire. And the couple things that like really struck me about it being just that really drew me into it were, number one, it creates this whole world without really bashing you over the head with it. It just kind of naturally includes these elements without it being like
the point of the
Oh,
story.
let me talk to you about why vampires exist in this world. It's like vampires are just here. Deal with it. But also the pacing and the build of the story is exactly what I want, which I always talk about, where it allows the characters to breathe, it allows the story to breathe. Like, it has pages where technically nothing happens, technically, like, the story doesn't progress, the characters don't progress, but it still makes it makes those moments where something does happen mean something, because it's not just throwing everything at you all the time.
Just experienced it. It counts. Where he was talking about his friend who finally read the first issue of Invincible and thought it was a new series, and it was his favorite.
Hey, if it came out this year, it was
the facsimile dropped. It counts.
So yeah, I'm super excited to continue reading it. And like I said, I hope it doesn't let me down from here. I mean, I enjoyed Bolero.
But
enough
you're saying they've at least had about 12 issues, something?
Yeah, I know 11 or 12 are out at this point. If 12 isn't out yet, then it's been solicited because I saw a cover for it. So
got it. Okay.
But I don't know if that's the last issue or if it's just the most recent. But if 3 issues came out last year, I'm guessing 12 came out in December probably. So
all right.
There you go.
My favorite book of the year is Detective Comics 27. Well, that's good. That's another one I get to add to my list to try to hunt down and see if I can read up on it. And the publisher was Image.
Image, yeah. I would assume there's at least one trade out.
12 issues you'd like to trade.
Not 2 trades.
All right.
There you go.
That was a curveball I was not expecting.
Yeah, I told you.
It was totally off my radar. I love it. All right. Next up for me is a book that I think a lot of people talked about, and I read issue 1, didn't love it, went back and read the rest of it, and fell in love with it. So I'm talking about Rom V's Rare Flavors. Yeah. This was a book that issue 1, I was not feeling like I was going to enjoy this cannibal taking a filmmaker on a ride through India and food. And I was like, this sounds just weird. But what it became, I feel like for me at least, over the entire story, was something that was more akin to the human experience and what food means as sustenance and connectivity to other people. And there was this beauty and poetry and kind of dark magic that was sort of cast by it. And I thought Rare Flavors, it became something magical. And it's easy to try to compare it to something like Layla Starr, which obviously talent-wise has a lot in common with this. But I think this felt more grounded than Layla Starr for me. And in the end, strangely human for a story with so many godlike characters. This one was really, really great. And in the end, I was sad to see it end when I read that last issue.
Yeah, I mean, once again, this is another book where I read the first issue. I didn't dislike it the way you did. I wasn't taken with it the way I was taken with Layla Starr. But
yeah,
again, I was like, especially because I was on the fence with this one, I was like, I'll wait for the trade. So I still need to read the trade for that.
Yeah.
So I can't say one way or another if you're right or wrong. But I have faith in Rom V and I have faith in your taste. So
I think I'm 2 for 2 with you, Chris, because you had Ain't No Grave and you had Rare Flavors in your list somewhere. So I hopefully I'm staying with you. Heating up a little bit. But yeah, I do agree. I have not really enjoyed Rom's Big 2 stuff, but hard to argue against his indie stuff. Really, absolutely fantastic. What is going on, Bearded? Good to see you, sir. Yeah, some of those recipes it's rare for a story about food to make you feel like you've tasted it. You know, it's like the movie Big Night with Stanley Tucci, where you feel like you've eaten the food just watching it.
Loose.
He is. And I think they accomplished that in Rare Flavors, where you really feel connected to the dishes each issue.
The cannibal
which is high praise. You know, yeah, you can certainly feel Layla Starr is a superior book, but Rare Flavors is still an absolute home run. All right, that's my number 4.
Okay.
Now are you on to the top 3 now? Is that where you're
top 3? Yeah. Unsurprisingly, it was on my list last year. It's on my list this year. Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees.
I've got it. Yeah, I'll load the image here for you. Mm-hmm.
I know you called this Dexter with animals, and I think that's a bit of a simplification.
Specifically Richard Scarry, but yeah.
Oh, that's right. I mean, if every story about a serial killer is Dexter, then what are we doing?
But in the sense that it's like a serial killer hunting another serial killer and trying to keep their life under wraps, it's very Dexter-like.
I guess so, but like that on the surface, but beyond that, like
the characters are very different.
Yeah, and the story is very different because Dexter is a police officer who's doing a job, who, you know, the serial killer is, at least in the first season, is, you know, kind of playing with them and because of who they are, not because of what he does necessarily. I don't know.
People loving this one.
I thought it was
Animal Crossing.
I thought it was a really, and this is a strange word to use for it, but lovely story about really complicated characters who do terrible things, and it's really hard to make you root for a character who is such a bad person, and I say person, you know, animal, whatever, and have you still like feel for them. I thought it was great.
No, you find yourself really connecting to these characters and their plights and understanding them, like Chris is mentioning her code for how she does it and what she does as a murderer. But then, you know, it's obviously there's a foil, right? There's she's the good serial killer. There's the bad serial killer, right? It's the story is written in such a way that you instantly can sympathize and then I don't like that serial killer. This is my serial killer over here. She's the good serial killer.
Right. Because she has a compulsion that she, you know, has an outlet for, that she has, you know, created an outlet for, whereas the other serial killer is just a crazy person who's wild and murdering people in the town that we
wants to get her attention. And yeah. So I mean, it was beautifully drawn too. I think I was impressed because this is the writer artist's very first comic.
Yeah.
And they write and draw the entire thing, and it's incredibly well done. Panel to panel, the storytelling is really strong. It reads really smoothly. You would never know this was a first attempt.
Yeah.
And that's mind-blowing to me.
And I think part of the reason why it hit so well is that it was such a surprise. And I think people like that, where it's like, you know, I feel like 8 Billion Genies was kind of the same way when that came out, where people were like, oh, this book's good. Let me go back and get it. And then the first issue starts becoming a back issue staple. Like Grommets did the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I'm afraid so. I'll probably love it. Well, good. There you go. There's a volume 2 coming. All right. More. There's more going on beneath those trees. Conlin's in the chat. He says, I met Patrick Horvath at NYCC. Very humble dude. Got my issue 1 signed. There you go. And I have a signed trade paperback floating around here somewhere that I'm going to be giving away at the end of January. So if somebody wants to read it and wants a signed copy, I can make that happen for you. All you got to do is be a member, like some of the folks in the chat, and like Dagger Cards just joined tonight. You can be a member. You can have a shot at winning. So there you go. Good luck. So I'm gonna do my number 3, probably higher on your list. Just knowing us.
Well, there's only two left, so
my number 3 is Precious Metal.
yeah.
Obviously, absolutely fantastic. I could imagine anybody doing a follow-up to such a popular book and trying to make it as good as the original. We've talked about Little Bird probably more than anybody ever needs to talk about Little Bird on this channel.
Not enough.
And we knew this was in the making. Obviously, it was a long time in the making. The sequel to Little Bird here, Precious Metal. But to have it, in my opinion, exceed expectations, that's the shocking part for me. Because we read issue 1 and I was like, this is good. It's not Little Bird, but it's good. By the time I finished the entire series and had read all the issues, I was happy to put it shoulder to shoulder with Little Bird, and it felt worthy of being included in that conversation, which again was far higher than I thought it would end up being. It really ended up working well for me. Yeah. I liked the characters. I liked the concept. I liked how it was in that universe, but you could read either one first, either in any order. Like, it didn't seem like necessary as a sequel, prequel, whatever you wanted to call it. It stood on its own, and really, I felt strong about it. And I'm glad you're with me on that one, Chris. Damer says, I still feel guilty. I own Little Bird, but have not read it. You should feel guilty about that.
Yeah.
And I know it will be higher, more than likely, on your list, but it was the top 2. I just felt like nothing was going to budge my top 2. It was really, so to put it at number 3 is not a slight, because I feel that highly and that passionately about my top 2. Not sure I understand what happened in Precious Metal. I need to reread it it's really good to read it all as one thing. I don't like reading it. I think I probably would have been more frustrated in single issues reading it. And I felt that way reading Little Bird the second time in the hardcover edition. Oh, actually, I think I probably read it all the second time in singles when you and I discussed it as a series. And then I got it a hardcover and read it again. Every time I feel like I've gotten more out of it, but I've always appreciated it in one inoculation, like one heavy dose.
Yeah.
That's me.
Yeah, I ended up reading it. I read the first issue when it came out and kind of recognized that it was going to read better altogether. So I waited and read it, the rest of it all together. And I'm definitely glad I did. So yeah, I would definitely recommend rereading it, Tacoma, as a trade, or rereading your singles, because
and they haven't released a trade or a hardcover yet, as far as I know.
I don't think so, but it just ended not too long ago, I feel like.
No, yeah, it hasn't been that long.
Unsurprisingly, it is my number 2.
Perfect segue.
So, yeah. And I say this kind of tongue in cheek a little bit, because not that Little Bird was lacking in popular circumstance, but it's almost like Little Bird was like this little indie hit, and then they got this huge budget for this and made Precious Metal, because it is just like so enormously wild at every turn. It's just like, what bigger, crazier thing can we include in this? Ian Bertram is next level creative. Like, I understand, like, he has a style that maybe is not going to be everyone's taste, but his creativity, his imagination, his storytelling is, I think, on a level that few reach ever. And the story definitely comes together when you read it as a whole. I didn't connect to it the same way I did Little Bird, but again, it might be because of the surprise element, or the unexpected where like I read Little Bird and I was like, what is this? Like, and this was like, okay, here's a Little Bird sequel. Little Bird obviously goes without saying is one of my favorite books of the last 5 years or whenever it came out. So it was hard to reach that bar for me, but
sure,
it came darn close, and it is a worthy successor for sure. Really, really great stuff.
So when you're talking about like that experience, you're talking about the surprise immersion into a universe that's so rich and detailed, and knowing you're going back into that universe, you already have that expectation and you kind of know what he's going to bring to the table, that kind of thing.
I guess so. And I mean, not to take anything away from Precious Metal, because it's a 10 out of 10, but it's not Little Bird.
That's fair. I didn't say hi to Bobby. What's going on, Bobby?
Good to see you,
sir. And yeah, I can see what you're saying. But for me, and maybe it was reading the first issue and feeling like, oof, I don't know if I'm ready for this. We'll see how it goes. And then reading it all together, I felt like it raised the bar for me. And I was stunned by how much I enjoyed it in the end, and how closely tied to Little Bird and my joy for Little Bird it was in the end.
And it definitely, even though it's, takes place prior, it's a prequel.
Yeah.
But it is unquestionably in the same universe.
Oh yeah.
So
and you get I like the look at the culty religion being born. That was really cool for me. I really dug that stuff.
Okay, the comments says like Ian Bertram. I mean, no one I want to meet, but I understand that like in the scope of comicdom, like his style is not what a lot of people kind of lean towards when you look at someone like a Marco Cicchetto, or a lot of the big two artists, which are kind of in the modern day Jim Lee kind of look of books, where it's just like very realistic as far as comics go, where Ian Bertram is just like, it's gross in a lot of ways. Like the way he draws people is uncomfortable in a lot of ways, but that's what I think makes it great. Especially characters like this, whose half a body is like squiggly weirdy stuff.
Oh, it reminds me of when I have that reaction to a book, it always reminds me of like Jeff Lemire in his work, and like May's book, or a lot of his own stuff. It has to suit obviously the material, and,
for sure.
And in this way, that's what makes the Little Bird universe books work. Is I can't imagine that universe without Ian Bertram. Like I don't know what it would be. It would not be Little Bird though.
And similarly, like books that Jeff Lemire draws and writes himself, I can't imagine them looking any other way, because his creator-owned stuff that he writes and draws lends itself so well to his style.
Yeah.
And again, like it's an ugly style in a lot of ways compared to what other people like. I don't think so. I think his artwork's quite beautiful, but
I mean that it's the
not
grotesque beauty of fish flies, right? I mean, it's like it's a marvelous read, and but I would not want it drawn by Ian Bertram or somebody. It has to be Lemire that does that book. Like it has to be Bertram that does this. Gore says Bertram is like he is from an earlier generation, from the heavy metal stuff, epic.
But he's like a very modern version of that. Like I wouldn't question seeing it in a magazine like that, but he still modernizes that idea and creates new stuff that like I've never seen before. And I'm not that I've read everything, but I've been a reader my whole life, and it's just he does things that are just crazy.
Well, yeah, and it takes I mean, it's good that we're spending a little time on this one because it's the first book on both of our lists. But it's a book that I think panel to panel, page to page, like continually takes time to absorb. You are really forced to look over the work, and you're not skim reading it like Something's Killing the Children, where you're just like, there's so few words and you can just sort of skim through the art. Like, I feel like there's something complex about what these two talents, Darcy Van Polgeest and Ian Bertram, are doing with this piece that I think captivates and takes focus and effort. It's not easily absorbed.
And they do this thing that I talk about a lot, and I give credit to both of them in this case because it definitely comes from the writer down, which is panels that create time, where even if it's just like a small strip of like raindrops or something, it gives you that beat of like, okay, this, comics are a time-based medium. And when you start ignoring that ability to tell a story with time, even if you're not consciously feeling like you're missing something, it feels rushed and it feels awkward, because when someone's over here and then in the next panel they're over here, and you don't have that something in the middle that allows that person to change their environment, sometimes it just feels off. And so there are these, and not only is it useful as far as that aspect of like telling a story that makes sense, but it also creates tension, it creates mood, it creates all these other things that is hard to create in a medium where you don't have music, you don't have emotion in vocal tone,
Yeah.
You have to use these other aspects of the medium that I feel like a lot of people just ignore, and that he uses it so well in this book.
Yeah, because to your point, like these are still images, so creating the movement, creating the action, creating the pace, that all happens panel to panel. What's up, Phil's Treehouse? What's going on? He says he's been a fan of Bertram since House of Penance and his run in Zero from Image, which I don't know that I've read either of those things.
No, I've not.
All right. Thanks for the info drop there, Phil. Appreciate that. All right. Well, then I guess it's on for my number 2 and my first time giving a book to the big 2. And boy, oh boy, are we making Magic Lasso happy tonight, because
I thought I'd see this.
I didn't know where I was going to put this on the list, but the last couple of issues it's just the best book for me at the big 2 right now. And this book is phenomenal. Yes. Love this cover. Gorgeous artwork. Interior, Daniel Sampier has been phenomenal. And I can't remember the last time I had a big 2 book in my top 2. Like, it's just not a thing I've done since I think we've been doing this show. And to have it be a Wonder Woman book, I would not have predicted that. And this book has continued to be, even when they're doing the mediocre big 2 tie-in event all-in issues, I'm still looking forward to it and still coming away with a smile. Tom King is somehow still able to navigate the editorial restraint and come out with something worth my $4. This book has been absolutely top tier, and every time I read a new issue, I'm ecstatic about it. And the issues can be almost standalone stories, but when you link them together across, I think we're at 19 issues now, it's just been a treat. And this is spectacular.
Magic Lasso says needs to be a cover needs to be a poster. I'm sure he knows this. I'm pretty sure there's a Virgin incentive for that cover.
There is. I have it.
Yeah, well, there you go. So for some reason that I cannot explain,
okay,
I started buying this when it came out. Loved every issue. We've talked about it. It just dropped off for me. I don't mean that the quality dropped off. Like, I just
didn't keep up with
it. I guess I forgot to put it on my pull list or something, and so now I'm behind and I haven't read it. So once again, I need to read this in trade, because this one I do know that I've enjoyed so far all the way for everything that I've read, and I have been excited to read it. So it is very reassuring to hear that it has only gotten better, and I don't doubt that it deserves a spot this high in your list.
And there've been a lot of really fun issues in these first 19. The random issue with Superman and Wonder Woman birthday shopping for Bruce Wayne. Like, it's an entire issue with Superman and Wonder Woman in the far reaches of space in some bazaar on some random planet shopping for Bruce's birthday. Phenomenal.
Like the carnival issue of Batman.
Very much like that. The issue where she tries to travel to the River Styx to catch a friend who's passing over to the other side before they're gone forever. Heartbreaking, beautiful. The battle in Washington, D.C., her against her rogues gallery, and they're like trashing the Washington Monument. Amazing. Absolutely entertaining. The interrogation episode issue where they're just like strapping her to a chair with the lasso of lies and trying to break her will. Phenomenal. And you get to see like them try to make her into a housewife in her own mind, like trick her into believing that she's destined to be Steve Trevor's homemaker. And it's phenomenal. Great comments on femininity and you know, the idea of where, you know, people are expecting you to behave and how they're expecting you to behave. Phenomenal. And then of course, you know, it's not really a spoiler because they had it before this run even started, the idea that she has a daughter. Trinity, I think is what she's called. The quote unquote birth of Trinity, really, really beautifully handled and really well done. And then the use of all the other Wonder Women throughout the series has also been so superb. So it's, yeah, to Tacoma's point here, it's a classic superhero comic, but it's also like pushing the envelope of what you can do in that. And it doesn't feel beholden to have like each issue connect to this next one and all be the same form and style. It really is willing to shake it up. And oh, this issue barely has Wonder Woman. She's almost like narrating it, and all the other characters are the leads. You know, things like that. Really, I love. Yeah, the birth issue is so powerful. Really well done. So I struggled. I was like, where do I put it? And I was like, in the end, I'm like, it's so enjoyable. I have to just put I have to put it up there. And for it to be an ongoing big 2 title, I feel like that's a whole other shock to me.
Yeah, there you go.
So there you go. No one does that to Diana. Nobody.
No one puts Wonder Woman in a corner.
So there you go. Time for number 1. I have a feeling I know what your number 1 is.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be a surprise to anybody. Yeah, it's the Deviant. It's just consistently at a level storytelling wise that I don't find very often in the comics that I read nowadays. It is just so layered in the subtext and in the character motivations and their in the reality of the story. It's just, and it's, I love the artwork, I love the storytelling. I am so sad that it's about to end because I could read 100 issues of this book and not ever feel like I'm missing anything. It is just so damn good, and so I think like important in a way. Talking about, you know, the perception of you know, alternate sexualities other than heterosexual, and, you know, especially in the past, and how they were perceived as perverts and deviants, and how they were persecuted for a lot of reasons. And not that the guy, and he very well may end up being the actual killer in the end, but it is presented as though he was, I don't want to say innocent, because he did some bad stuff, it seems, you know, like taking pictures of the kids. And
yeah,
so like he was by no means,
You mean the guy who is in
Who's in
jail
jail.
currently?
Yeah, but the original serial killer.
The original killer, yeah.
I mean, unless there's multiple killers, the main character is not the killer, because we see the killer in this last issue when the main character is in prison.
Right.
So
both of those guys are now in jail.
Right. So unless like someone has taken the costume or a second costume and continue the work that he has done, but I guess we'll find that all out in the next issue. But it's just I've talked ad nauseum about it throughout the year, and it's just so damn good.
Yeah, I think the thing I am most taken by it, obviously it is a horror book. It has a lot of those tropes, but what I'm most taken by is the characterizations are so strong. I love the way the main character and his partner are portrayed, the way they are almost like, as one gets into deeper and deeper trouble, his partner is now almost like taking over for him and continuing the case. I love the I don't want to call him the Hannibal Lecter character, but the one that they're visiting in jail, the original killer, those sequences.
He's clearly
with him.
an incredibly intelligent individual.
Yeah.
And he plays a lot of mind games, but is that because he was pushed into that box, or is that because of who he is? Like,
or is he bored being in jail all this time and having people come to visit him as a chance to play a game, entertain yourself some way?
Right. Yeah. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So the characterizations are, for me, the strongest component, and the horror parts are certainly well executed, but that's not why I'm picking it up.
No. It is. The horror components are almost like a means to an end, because like it's not really what the story's about.
Completely agree. Awesome. Well, then my number one is been my number one since, I don't know, March, whenever the series wrapped in 2024. It started in 2023, so it was a lot of people's 2023 books. I can't speak enough about or speak highly enough of Traveling to Mars by Mark Russell and Roberto Haley. Kelly. I can't remember. This book is amazing. It hits all the feels, meaning it makes me laugh out loud at several points. It makes you tear up and just feel like a gut punch. It makes you shocked. Like you're stunned at some moments. The twists go places I wasn't expecting. And it's just a phenomenal ride. And it's just an amazing book. It's an amazing book. And when I finished reading it in March, I think I posted on my Instagram, there's no way something is going to best this. And
there's only 3 issues this year.
There were 3 issues this year, yeah, of the 11.
So is that really the best of the year, John?
It absolutely is. 1000%.
What if it didn't begin great?
Thankfully, I know that.
Yeah, I know.
It's not an unknown quantity. No, so great. And I believe the trade is finally coming here at the beginning of the year, February something.
Yeah, I've been waiting for it.
This book is so worth your time. As Chris is saying, this will genuinely make you feel things, like a lot of different things. And it is absolutely phenomenal. I plan on buying many of these and giving them away to people just so that it gets read more. These smaller books, and I don't remember if this is an AW or it might be a Blaze.
It's a Blaze, yeah.
They just don't get read the same way, and it's a shame. And I'm still upset that they haven't released
read the same way. They're still in the same format, right? Still read them in the same way. It's not like some experimental medium, right?
In the same amount.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And so I want to make sure more people are reading it, and more people should be talking about it. That's for certain. What is up, 4 Color Commentary? Good to see you. I will happily hook you up, TJ. Yeah, it was a lot of people had it as their number one, or it was right up there with Beneath the Trees last year. So now I'm willing to talk about them both this year, finally. But yeah, this I love the odd dark humor that Mark Russell always seems to imbue in his stories. In this case, a guy who was just a failure in life, finding out that he can be useful in death and capitalizing on that in the only way our end phase capitalistic society will allow. It's absolutely an interesting journey, and all the introspection that happens on this journey to Mars, where he knows he's going to die. There's not like any escape plan here. He is definitely in this to die. What is that like when you have to spend all that time sort of in isolation with your favorite droids? I think that whole experience is powerful stuff, and is just, yeah, Mark Russell hits another home run. This might be the best thing I've ever read from him, and I liked a lot of his stuff. Not All Robots and Second Coming, and he's currently doing X Factor, which is fine, but this is the home run.
X Factor was my favorite of the relaunch titles. So,
I mean, it because it has his like jokey, fun. Let's look at capitalism on its head,
right.
and mock what we're creating.
Yeah, kind of a tongue-in-cheek kind of dry humor in a sense. I don't know.
Yeah. So there you go. If you've read Not All Robots, or you've read Second Coming and enjoyed any of those, I think there's 3 volumes in Second Coming and only 1 in Not All Robots. You probably already know how great Mark Russell is.
3 volumes in Second Coming. It's a throwback joke to
there it is.
Greatest comic book show of all time.
Those are the
days. We'll get
that. Drew Manchu is clapping somewhere. So there you go. That's our list, or my list. That's his list. And some honorable mentions. Is there anything you feel like we didn't mention that you wanted to say anything about for 2024? Are you feeling like you captured it all?
Yeah, I mean, this show's been long, so I'm good.
Obviously, leave us your comments when this video is up. Let us know some of your favorites that we missed. If you made a video of your favorites, please drop that link at some point. I'd love to see your videos. I've highlighted and shared this gentleman's top 25, all full of great books you should be checking out. And of course, Absolute Batman's in there too. You should definitely check it out.
I've heard it's Batman AF though.
He does a great job of capturing the entire comic book 2024 in all of its facets and all these great books. So it's definitely worth your time if you have not seen that video. And I left like 16 comments on it, so you can definitely make fun of mine. It begins with Mark Russell's satire, but really gets into some emotional bits he normally doesn't hit. Very unique piece by him. That's fair. We're going to bounce out of here. I appreciate everybody coming and hanging with us. At the end of, or I should say at the start of February, we'll be back over on Alec's channel. So use the link down below, and we'll be looking at the best books from January and having a little chat about how 2025 is starting off. So definitely subscribe, and I'll see you guys over there. All right.